2022 was a great year for us Pokémon fans as we got not one, but two Pokémon games which deviate from the generic overused gameplay design of the past generations. Pokémon's Legends Arceus and Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. While not perfect, both of these games are wonderfully refreshing with their new approach to the series. Legends Arceus is an open-world action RPG spin-off title that's set in the Hisuian region, which is a historical version of Sinnoh, and Scarlet and Violet, which is the first title in the mainline series to be a non-linear open-world game set in the region of Paldea. I'm not going to be talking about the technical hiccups in these games, as that's just beating a dead horse at this point. Instead, let's talk about the direction that the future Pokémon games could go to from a gameplay perspective. Now, these are just my collective thoughts, as I know next to nothing about the difficulties or complexities of game design, so please take this with a pinch of salt. I'm sure if Game Freak had the time and resources, they would put the very best game out that they could. So let's begin with the stars of the show, the whole reason why we love and play these games, the Pokémon. They are now able to be seen in the overworld. When Pokémon Let's Go first showed Pokémon in the overworld, initially I was excited. I was completely taken back by the fact it was a Gen 1 remake with a gorgeous art design. And then the game kinda disappointed because of all the Pokémon Go mechanics. And then we got Pokémon Sword and Shield, and this is when I realised that having Pokémon in the overworld is not as great as it could be. Pokémon were disappearing and reappearing right in front of my eyes like there were a wild Abra. In any other game, this would be classed as bad popping. Game Freak have a major task on their hands, as not only do they have to animate hundreds of Pokémon and try to have them populate the world before the players can see them, they have to implement Pokémon behaviours which we have seen glimpses of in Scarlet and Violet. You will see Pokémon taking naps, eating food, and being around their parent-like figure, which is the evolved version of that Pokémon. In Legends Arceus, Pokémon kind of just existed in the world with the sole purpose of being caught. So for the next mainline game, there needs to be more variety to the behaviours of Pokémon to help make the world feel more immersive and alive. Have Pokémon do some of the things they say they do in their Pokédex entries. For example, Zangoose fighting with a Seviper because of their long-running feud. With this in mind, Pokémon with naturally aggressive behaviours should be hostile towards the player. And so, I think it is important for the next mainline game to implement a few features from Pokémon Legends Arceus. The catching mechanics and the Pokémon being able to damage and knock out the player. Aggressive Pokémon towards the player needs to happen to feel right in this world, as Pokémon are dangerous. Again, players want to be immersed into this Pokémon world, and I don't think you would be able to just waltz into a Cypher den. Cypher should be trying to slice you up for encroaching on its territory. The catching mechanics from Legends Arceus would need to be refined, as it's far too easy. Reduce the capture rate down to a point where there is only a small chance of being able to catch a Pokémon without battling them. Just like in the anime, Ash wasn't able to just throw balls and catch whatever Pokémon. He would battle them first, but at least give us that option, as this gives more player agency. And when you actually catch a Pokémon through this method, it will feel all the more rewarding. The camera would have to shift down to a closer third-person view like it is in Legends Arceus, which in my opinion looks better as it gives more immersion. The floaty camera, which extends to a top-down view in Scarlet and Violet, quite frankly isn't very flattering. Now, the next thing may be difficult to implement from a technical standpoint, and I'm probably asking for too much here, but having all the Pokémon that can use traversal methods like Surf and Fly being able to do that in the overworld. Imagine being able to ride a Gyarados across the seas or fly across the skies on a Dragonite. Having a legendary Pokémon gifted to you at the start of a game to eventually become your bike, plane and boat is not great. It's equivalent to making Lugia a HM slave in Pokémon Silver. You just wouldn't do that, would you? The chances of this ever happening is incredibly slim, so how about choose one Pokémon for each type of traversal, which is exactly what they did in Legends Arceus. Let's say a Lapras to surf, a Pidgeot to fly and a Machamp to climb cliffs. Don't worry about my selections, these are just examples. Give us these 3 Pokémon throughout the story for good reasons, which we can access at any time to do traversal stuff as well as being in the team. This could also help with level gating harder areas like they had done in previous games. The next topic is quest design in the open world. Having an open world is great and all, but what is the point if there's nothing to do in it? The only thing you can do across both of these games is catch Pokémon. Most open world games have a main quest and side quests, and Pokémon should follow suit. Yes, they already did this in Legends Arceus, but ultimately it turned out to just be catch this Pokémon and bring it back to the village or collect these items. The quests should be centered around Pokémon behaviors and interactions, whether they're good or bad. Imagine a quest where we have groups of grass Pokémon ready to battle it out with each other. It could be over territory, which is a beautiful waterfall in a secluded area with deep meaning and lore, and it's your job to resolve the dispute. Or maybe you are travelling through a forest or a mountain and you come across a sick and wounded Pokémon, and you are tasked with bringing this Pokémon to the closest Pokémon Center to get treatment from Nurse Joy. On your way, you come across the poachers that hurt this Pokémon and you have to battle them to get past. This could evolve into another side quest as well. Nurse Joy could inform you that the poachers have a base in the forest, which you then have to go and explore to find the base and beat them so they leave. These could be small little story beats to really flesh out the world. Now, this might be divisive, but I feel that the Pokemon games should be a little bit more darker. Yeah, these games are for kids, but at the time when we were kids, we was already learning about a Pokemon burial ground in Lavender Town, and the fact that Cubone wears its dead mom's skull on its head, and we turned out fine, didn't we? That's not my only dark example. Team Rocket tried to capture Slowpokes to harvest their tails, as it was a sought after delicacy in Gold and Silver. Drifloon's Pokedex entry explains that it tries to take children away to the afterlife. Mewtwo is a failed experiment who destroyed a lab and has seemingly killed people. Have I made my point yet? I'm not saying that the next Pokemon games should feature death and destruction, just make the bad guys a little more bad, like the poaching example from earlier in the video. Here's another idea for content. The anime shows Ash and friends doing activities besides catching Pokemon and battling gyms, right? Why not implement some of these? Add Rhyhorn racing, which is what Serena's mom does, or make fishing spots in various locations with like one really rare Pokemon that resides there and is hard to catch with gorgeous scenery and lore for that area. At this stage, I would even take Pokemon contests back, and I barely did them in previous games. The possibilities are truly endless. The open world design needs more variety. Who remembers the days when there were interesting caves, landmarks and forests? All this seems to be missing in present games. In Sword and Shield, the caves and forests were straight roads. Caves should be like dungeons from any other RPG game, filled with content and have something valuable in them. They used to do this in the older games where caves were not just for getting from A to B. Once you had a certain HM, like Strength or Rock Smash or even Waterfall, it would open up new areas in that cave. And once you explore that cave, there are stronger Pokemon, maybe even legendaries and rarer items. I'm not saying bring HMs back, but figure out a way to make caves small dungeons for us to enjoy and explore. And the final thing that I would like to see reworked, as it hasn't ever been changed since the very first Pokemon game, and that is no more static trainers to battle. Create a more refined system in place for battling trainers. I know this would be very difficult to implement with everything else that the game has to render, but hear me out. Have the trainers look like they're trying to catch Pokemon in the grass, walking up and down the routes, or even conversing with each other. Just make them feel like living people. Let them eat an Oranberry once in a while. I thought of this concept where maybe the trainers could be randomly generated and whatever area you are in has a level range. For example, Zone 1 is level 5 to 10, Zone 2 is level 11 to 20 and so forth. Zone 1 trainers can only have whatever Pokemon are caught in Zone 1, like Caterpie, Pidgey and Zubat. And as you progress to the later zones, the range of Pokemon that can be selected would increase, as the Pokemon from the previous zones are included as well. So let's say Zone 2 has Oddish, Geodude and Psyduck. The trainers in Zone 2 can select Pokemon in their zone as well as Pokemon from Zone 1, but as Zone 2 is a higher level range between 11 to 20, if they did get a Pokemon from Zone 1, they may be able to get the evolved version of that Pokemon. This isn't the only variable either. They could still continue with the trainer type, so let's say you match up against a swimmer in Zone 2. As we know, swimmers tend to use only water type Pokemon, so they would only be able to select the water type Pokemon from Zone 2, and this would be the same for the other types of trainers, so hikers would only be able to pick rock and ground type Pokemon, whereas bug catchers would only have bug type Pokemon. And as you get into the later zones and you get more badges, you come up against more ace trainers with a party range of 4 to 6, because it's only right that you come up against like-minded people in the later stages. It doesn't have to be that every zone is selected as well, so once you get to Zone 5, it doesn't mean that Zone 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 can be selected. You can change the zones, so maybe it's Zone 3 to 5 that can only be selected. This would make every battle you have unique and keep us trainers on our toes. Every playthrough of the game would be different, which is exactly what an RPG game should do. In my opinion, an RPG is a game that aids replayability, but I find that once I've completed a Pokemon game, I'll very rarely replay it, mainly due to the fact that it took me over 100 hours to catch them all. But if I was to start again, there isn't anything I could do differently, so what would be the point? You would have the same trainers with the same Pokemon in the same areas and the gym leaders with the same teams. There are a few major flaws with this design, one being that it would be a difficulty spike and it wouldn't be very child friendly, and I think it would be difficult to render with everything else that's going on in the game. It's something I would definitely welcome if that was implemented into the mainline games. Tell me, is there anything you would like to see change for the next game in the series? Or even anything on this list that you feel would work or wouldn't work? Let's talk about it in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to join me today as we discussed all things Pokemon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe as I look to continue putting out more content around gaming. You guys are the very best. My name is Jammer and take care for now.